Raise your hand if you've ever yelled at a rabbi. Seriously? No, just me. Am I the only person telling the truth? Okay. So before you start to judge me, please allow me to explain myself. It was a cold, dark night, and I was in downtown Cincinnati for yet another protest. This protest wasn't for Tamir Rice. It wasn't for John Crawford III. It wasn't for Tanisha Anderson. It wasn't for Melissa Williams. This protest was for Eric Garner. Some of you may remember him. His homicide went viral, and his last 3 words still haunt me. Those words were, "I can't breathe." So we were gathered in Pyatt Park, dozens of strangers, to extend our condolences and our solidarity to his family in New York. But we were also there to push back on a system that deems Black death justifiable under any circumstances. So we're there. The protest is very fluid, as they usually are. People step to the bullhorn, they make remarks, and those remarks are usually followed by chants. So there's this one point during the protest where it gets eerily quiet. I'm talking Langsam quiet. Well, Langsam's not really quiet, depending on, we called it Club Langsam back in my day, but that's the library for the non-UC folks. So it gets eerily quiet. And that silence was bothering me. And it was one of my first protests, so I decided to start chanting, right? So I start chanting, "Black lives matter, Black lives matter, Black lives matter." And while I'm chanting, I thought it was God, but it wasn't. I hear on the other side of me, "All lives matter, all lives matter, all lives matter." So of course, I turn around, probably not as calmly as I am now, and I'm looking for the source of this counter chant, and I lock eyes with a rabbi. So me and a rabbi outside in the rain, in a park, on a cold Thursday night, counter chanting each other. At that moment, I was disturbed, but when I think back at it, I realized that we were engaged in an ideological battle that we are still dealing with as a country. And when I reflect on that situation, I realized that I should have asked myself, how would I want the rabbi to show up for me differently? And what are my expectations of folks that I hope what are the expectations I have for folks who want to do anti-racist work? So using that as sort of a caveat to ask myself those questions, I came up with some answers that I want to share with you, if that's okay. So these answers aren't that sophisticated, just to let you know. They're not patented, so you can also borrow them. But I came up with a series of ups that I would like you to consider if you are a person who dedicates themselves to anti-oppression work or anti-racist work. So I'm gonna need you to repeat them with me so I understand that we're on the same page. Is that cool? Cool. So the first up is wake up. Say wake up. Wake up. Pretty simple, right? Not wake up as in get out of bed, but wake up to the reality that racism is more than just a character flaw. So often do we all like to excuse our prejudices and our biases by stating we are not that person, but we have to be a little more investigatory about how when we're thinking about how these things show up in our institutions. For example, racism in Cincinnati no longer looks like the Ku Klux Klan applying to put their cross on Fountain Square during Christmas time. Yes, that actually happened up until the year 2000. You should check it out. That's no longer what racism looks like. Racism today in Cincinnati looks like 74% of Black children under the age of 6 living in poverty. 74% of Black children living in poverty. So waking up requires that we inspect not only ourselves but our institutions and begin to ask the questions, what are the invisible biases and what are the consequences of leaving anti-racist work undone? So that's the first up, okay? What's first up? Good. Second up, show up. Y'all, ooh, I love you. We need to take this on the road. Show up. So showing up seems somewhat self-explanatory, right? Showing up doesn't always have to mean standing in Piatt Park in the rain while protesting with other rabbis. Showing up, showing up looks like beginning to do the work of educating oneself and then using that education to put forth action. So if you're in a meeting and you recognize that decisions are being made and people of color are not included, that's how you show up. You challenge those processes and you use whatever your social position is to do the work of good. Pretty simple, right? Show up. Show up. Cool. It's like church for some of us. The third up, let me preface this before you toss your leftover Subway at me. It's going to be directly for my white folks in the room, okay? Where my white people at? Good, I just wanted to see if you were present. Okay, so the third up is incredibly difficult, but it's incredibly easy at the same time. The third up is shut up. Shut up. Say it with some enthusiasm. Okay, so Christina Brown, how are you going to tell me to commit myself to doing anti-racist work and then tell me to shut up? I know, the audacity. So for my white folks in the room, whenever we're doing work in a space where we have privilege, we have to be conscious about the ways in which we show up. So for people of color, historically and currently, they experience marginalization in all forms. So for you to be a good anti-racist advocate or ally, it is important to listen. And my mom always says, if you're talking, you're not listening. So shutting up can be one of the most profound things you can do to disrupt racism and to validate the experiences of people of color. Cool? Shut up. The last one is more of a moral question or a moral call to action, and that is give up. So when give up, yes, I knew I had someone with me. So when I say give up, I don't mean give up your pursuit for racial justice. I mean, ask the question, what privileges am I willing to give up in the name of equity for all? Sometimes that's comfort. Sometimes that's a political question. Sometimes it's an economic question. But it's really a call to consciousness. For those of us who are experiencing privilege, we don't recognize that there are extra benefits that we are afforded. And to ask the question, what am I willing to give up, is to ask the ultimate question of how I plan to show up as a racial justice ally. This isn't an appeal that'll fix all of our problems. That rabbi is probably still mad at me. But this can be a continuum of a lifelong journey to begin to do all forms of anti-oppression work. So if you leave with nothing today, I call for you to rise up in the quest to wake up. Thank you.